Okay. Good morning. Welcome to Oldham County Board of Adjustments. Today is June 21st. It's 9 o'clock. We are now in session. There's two cases. Procedures for both cases will be the same. Here in a minute, we're going to swear staff in. Mr. Pate will read the case, and I'm assuming it's going to be Amy that's going to present the case to us. There'll be a round of questioning by the board members to staff, and when we're done with that, staff will take a seat, and I'll call you forward, the applicant. You'll come forward, raise your right hand, state your name and address, be sworn in, and justify the project. You'll have 20 minutes to do so. When you're done, there'll be a round of questioning by the board members to you, the applicant. When we're done with that, you may take a seat. Seeing nobody else in the audience, I don't think we'll have testimony for those in favor or opposed. However, I'll call for time for that if anybody happens to come in. When we're done with anybody here in favor or opposed, you'll have time for rebuttals. And then the opposition will have time for rebuttals if there is any, and then there'll be final statements. I'll close the floor for hearing, open it up for general discussion among the board members, and call for an up and down vote. Board members, please make sure your phones are off or on silent. Make sure your mics are on. I think that's it. Let's go ahead and swear staff.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, David, you want to read the first case?
Yes. Amy, did you say we were doing case 2 first?
Yeah,
Okay.
For 5703 is not here yet, so we will go to 18-021, please.
All right, this is docket number OC 18021. An application has been filed requesting a rear yard setback variance for a proposed structure located at 6390 Clore Lane, Crestwood.
Good morning, Amy Alvey with Oldham County Planning and Development Services. As Mr. Pate just stated, this is an application requesting approval of a rear yard setback variance for a proposed structure to be located at 6390 Clore Lane. The property is zoned R2 residential and is approximately 0.4502 acres. There is no previous site history regarding this lot. This is an aerial view of the lot. This is the roundabout here, Spring Hill Trace in Clore Lane, and then you'll see the subject lot highlighted there in red. The applicant is requesting a rear yard setback variance to allow a roofed deck to encroach into the rear setback on a proposed single-family home in Brentwood, Section 3. Division 330020, number 9 states an open, unenclosed, unroofed porch, deck, or paved terrace may project into a required front yard or required rear yard a distance of not more than 10 feet. Due to the deck being roofed, it must meet the rear yard setback of the primary structure, which is 25 feet in the R2 zoning. The survey provided by the applicant shows the roof deck 17 feet from the rear property line, therefore requiring a variance of 8 feet. This is the survey plot plan that was submitted with the building permit application. You'll see here highlighted in green is the 35-foot front yard setback, so the house is pushed as close as it can be to the front property line. And then the footprint of the house is outlined in blue, and then the subject area that is encroaching into the rear yard, that is the roof deck or porch. Due to the location of the lot related to the roundabout, the driveway must be located to the far eastern property line, which limits the location of the garage and layout of the house on the lot. This is the road encroachment permit that was issued for the driveway, and our county engineer's office goes out and determines the best and safest location. And you'll see it says driveway location is limited to Clore Lane, just north of the 20-foot drainage easement on the south side of the building lot. And it says also pedestrian sidewalk is required across the front of the building lot along Clore Lane Road right of way. The applicant's justification statement states that the way the home is situated on the lot, the rear deck will not face any homes directly behind it and backs up to the wooded area. And it also states that the proposed deck is similar to others in the neighborhood. So again, this is the front here. So this would be a side, and a rear. And this just kind of gives you more of a zoomed out look. And then this is the driveway encroachment area that we were just speaking of. So this is looking, the star on the map down here at the bottom, that's where I was standing taking the picture. So this is from the curve of the road of Clore Lane looking into the subject lot. This is standing in the driveway looking back towards the entrance into Brentwood, or the, not the entrance, but the sign, signature sign. This is across the street looking into the site, and again, that's the encroachment, and then this is the treed area. Just another angle. This is the side yard. This is the heavily treed area as well, and then it also there. That's where the drainage and overhead utility easement is. This is just looking into the site. The foundation. A building permit was issued for the project, but there was a note that was put on the permit application, just as says, you know, it's a new home with finished basement, permit approved without covered rear deck, pending variance approval at Oldham County Board of Adjustments June meeting. Let me see where I have it. This was the first floor plan, and they actually struck through the portion on the application and put applying for variance so we could go ahead and prove the building plans as submitted, with them knowing that this portion was not approved. But this is the elevation, the front and rear elevations that were submitted with the building permit application. This is the left and right elevations. This is the foundation plan. So again, the area here is what is in question. And again, they struck out on the first floor plan that portion on the plan, showing it to be removed pending the variance approval. So this just kind of gives you the orientation of how the home will be on the lot. So in summary, the applicant is requesting a rear yard setback variance. The required rear yard is 25 feet. The requested rear yard is 17 feet. The variance requested is 8. And that is all that I have. Happy to answer any questions.
I understand this right, then if it wasn't covered, then because it only imposes by 8 feet, because you can go 10, we wouldn't be here today.
Correct.
Amy, what's the minimum side yard setbacks?
7.5 feet.
Just out of curiosity, why was the house not shifted on this image as we look at it? Why was it not shifted to the right-hand side?
You would have to ask the applicant that.
Because it seems to me that based on the beveled shape of the lot, every distance that we move to the right, you can also move forward.
Correct.
That would be a question for the applicant.
Okay. But it's what, 7? Is there 7.5?
7.5.
Okay. And you made some reference, I'm sorry, could you, regarding the driveway location due to the turnabout?
Due to the roundabout?
Yes.
The encroachment permit that was approved for it required that the driveway be placed on this, closest to this property line out of the easement area. There's a 20-foot, I think, drainage easement and electrical easement, overhead electrical easement. Where did I have that? Yeah.
And then there's also some like island or something out in the
Yeah,
road
yeah,
area
and
that
so
requires-
it
okay.
can't be further out here because then it would be, they wouldn't have the opportunity to go out. They'd only be able to go right out of exiting the driveway and not left.
Okay, thank you.
Could you go back to the shot that you just had, talking about the driveway? Yeah. Where was the electrical easement?
All right here. 20-foot, 15-foot overhead electrical and a 20-foot drainage easement.
All right. Any more questions for Amy? Okay, thank you, Amy. Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Barry Baxter, 117 West Main Street here in LaGrange. I'm the attorney. I represent the applicant. The first comment that I would make, I guess, is, can I? So this is the original drawing when, so my client is building this home obviously for someone else. They didn't have anything to do with the development of Brentwood. They just purchased a lot in there, and this is the lot that is selected by the homeowner, and so now we've got somebody who wants to build a house on this particular lot. The first plan would have been this plan. Now, the problem with this plan and the road encroachment is you have the garage over here, which would have been accessed from this point. And obviously, with the road encroachment being required here, that's not going to work. So the plan for the house was then flipped from that to this, which is what they are asking to do, which allows use of the driveway through the encroachment permit and accessing the garage at this location. And then we have the issue, which is the covered porch in the back that is 17 feet from the rear property line. My client looked at trying to orient the house a little differently on this lot. And when they did this, they shifted the house. The problem with this is twofold. One is that I believe the subdivision requires that you're supposed to try to have your garage not facing the roadway. So we would have a potential issue here with the garage being oriented somewhat towards the roadway. And the other is that if you will remember, with the roundabout being located here, or maybe even further down here, this house just doesn't look very appealing in the manner that it sits on the lot. And we still have the problem that we are too close with this to the rear setback, even though we've reoriented the house to a different location. There is, and Amy's, I don't know if your pictures showed it or not, that this lot actually has construction on it now. So the aerial does not depict any construction. Did your picture?
Yeah, it's, it's kind of hard to see, but it's
Yeah.
this house there.
So that house is being constructed, and if we shift the house closer to that right line, again, it's not going to be oriented particularly attractively on the lot. Further, we're going to be getting much closer to that particular resident who does not have an issue with what we're doing at this point, but he might have an issue if we're going to build our house that much closer to his property. So the reason for this is from an aesthetic standpoint, this particular orientation of the house is really the most aesthetically pleasing. It solves our problem with that we didn't create with the encroachment having to be here. And you know, I mean, this drawing is not a good depiction of what we'd like to do. Still gets me to my right there. So from that perspective, you know, this is not an issue that we created with this roundabout. And honestly, even if the roundabout didn't exist, if the roads teed in at that location, I'm not sure that we would be in a position to do anything different about the orientation of where the driveway is going to be, because we would be so close to that intersection that we might still have the same problem with the county engineer. So from what we're asking to do is to resolve this problem in a way to allow this variance to be granted due to the situation created by where we have to put the driveway. And we would ask you to approve the variance. It's not going to, I mean, honestly, if you turn the house, it's still going to be the same problem, and you're still going to have the porch in the same location, and actually it's probably shifted more towards looking towards the neighbors if you move the house or move it closer to that right property line. So that's what we have, and we would ask you to approve the variance based upon the fact that this is really the only way we can orient this house on this lot from an aesthetic standpoint and be consistent with the other houses built in the neighborhood. That's all I have.
Okay. Questions for Barry?
Well, the presumption, I think, in your presentation, Mr. Baxter, is that what we've got here is a house that's been designed, that's what they want to put, but a different designed house that wasn't as long. Number one, if it was designed differently, more of a less rectangular and more squarish, if you would, we wouldn't have this issue. And two, I go to what Mr. Funk said earlier, is if we shifted that to the right, you could also shift it forward and avoid this issue completely.
Well, I'm not sure from a mathematics standpoint how far this line, if you move the house this direction, you're going, trying to do this math, 15 and a half feet this direction. I'm not sure what it's a triangle. So, I mean, you're asking me what's that theorem? I can't even think of what the theorem is to try to calculate a triangle, but I'm not sure how far that moves it. And again, that gets us closer to that neighbor who had no issue with this orientation, but might have an issue with us being that much closer to his property.
Well, the issue that the neighbor would have, though, is a personal issue, not a standards issue. Because as long as you live within the standards that are of the side yard setback, you can build up to and including that edge.
I don't disagree with you about that. I just don't know from a mathematics standpoint that does completely solve that problem.
Based on the overhead view that we're observing, it appears as if there's an offset on the front elevation of the garage. I'm assuming that front elevation, that front line closest to the property line, which is the building limit, is an offset. Based on no greater information than I have, it appears to me as if it's a 2-foot offset. So it appears as if there's things that could have been done, such as eliminating the 2-foot offset, which presumably is an architectural feature, so it's simply just a guess on my behalf, that if the 2-foot offset on the front of the garage is eliminated, we would be asking for less encroachment in the rear.
And just so I understand,
Yes, sir.
you're talking about,
Yes, that right
There?
there. Yes, that offset.
and I can't answer the question about how long that is.
But it seems like there's going back to what's being discussed here is if the architectural feature of a 2-foot offset was eliminated, the building was slid to the right, working within the parameters of the building limit conversation being at 7.5 feet, I don't think we'd be having any of this conversation. I think that based on the images that I've seen, we have a bigger problem. You've already got a foundation in.
Let me just clarify the setback. It's 7 and 25, not 7.5, shortest on the side. So it can't be any closer than 7 feet on one side,
Yes.
and the other side must be 18.
Thank you, Amy.
Closest is there.
But I think that the bigger issue that we're staring down the barrel of now is based on the images that I've observed, we've already got foundation footings in.
That's true.
Mr. Baxter.
This is the business manager of my client, and I want to get Mr. Mueller, right? Mueller. Can I get him sworn in and let him tell you what he just told me? You need to stand.
Come forward. Raise your right hand.
Excuse me,
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And name and address.
Michael Mueller, business address is 508 Sturbridge Place, Louisville, Kentucky, 40253.
Can you repeat the street address?
508 Sturbridge, that's Sturbridge Place. That's our office in Louisville for Jason Northover Builder LLC.
Okay. You've heard some of the discussion.
Yes. The comment that I would make, and I don't know, I have not heard it presented here. This is a custom designed home contracted directly with the buyers, Anthony and Jennifer Fleming. Okay, so they participated directly in the design of the house. I heard a mention, I think it was from you, Mr. Hutchins, about changing the orientation. These people have already, in a very meticulous process, agreed to this and given us a very significant amount of money down. Now, if we were to make a significant design change on the configuration of this house, we no longer are building the house that they've contracted for. So it's a high likelihood that the whole project goes away. Because these people, they want this house. This is what our company does for a living, is we don't build standard houses. We build custom houses for people. So we had this couple come to us and say, we want a certain kind of house with so many bedrooms, so many baths, certain dimensions, and this is the way this house is designed. So could we make minor changes? Yes, but can you make a significant change on the overall design and shape of this house? The answer is no, not without blowing up the project.
Let me ask you something else, sir. So they asked for a covered,
Absolutely, they did.
and if they are not allowed to have that, I mean, the house is gonna stay in this location because the foundation is already dug and the footers are in.
That's correct.
And so, if they can't have this covered porch, they will have to have, because they don't grant the variance, they'll have to have an uncovered porch.
They won't have to. They can then refuse the project because we would have violated the contract that we have with them to build this specific house.
Okay.
Now, in which case, then our company ends up with the lot and the costs that are incurred, and it puts a significant financial jeopardy on our company.
Okay, but again, so the question is this, it's not the location. I
Yes,
mean,
the
it's
question
gonna-
is the fact they want a covered porch. That's correct.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Frankly, the terms of your contract, whether the homeowner is stuck with a covered porch and has to fulfill the contract, or whether you have to can't fulfill the contract and they can back out of it, is not the concern of this board.
I guess I'm shocked that it's not, but
I mean, the terms of your contract is the terms of your contract, and we're not reviewing or setting any of that. Our point is that we have to look at is, can you or anyone else be able to live within the rules? And is there special circumstances or other requirements that causes us not to be able to fulfill the rules? And I think the point of the question, that at least from me, and other board members can speak for themselves, has been, why couldn't we have done something to live within the rules? And if you can, if whether it's your company or whether it's the buyers of the house have chosen to move forward without going before this, that's an at-risk behavior that you've taken that has really no bearing upon us. It's the question of, maybe you should have waited a few more weeks before you came before the board. Because the way I do the math, and again, I'm not an expert on geometry here either, but if we could have moved it 15, 16 feet to the right, and if that angle in the front is somewhat a 45-degree angle, You could have moved it to the side, picked up your 8 feet, not to mention the other 2 feet that was brought up before, and been able to live within the rules that there is. So I think that's the problem I have, is that it's not whether you've moved forward with the foundation, you've chosen to do that. And it appears to me that we could have moved forward without having to come for a variance at all on this.
It was an aesthetics issue. It would not look good if it moved that far to the right.
Y'all have any other questions for him?
No.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any other questions? All right, very good. Seeing nobody else in the audience, I don't see anybody here to speak in favor or opposed. Any final statements? Board members, any questions for anybody in the audience?
I just want to clarify, they're not asking for the house to be moved or anything. They're just asking roof the existing patio that is at the rear of the home. So, just so you know, the foundation's in, the house is not being shifted. They're just asking whether or not you all will grant them permission to either to roof the existing patio or deck that is there.
Amy, can you, in your presentation, Amy, I think you had some shots of some of the neighboring properties. Keep going, keep going.
There's not one really.
That's fine right there. Okay. Board members, anybody, any other questions for anybody in the audience? Okay, I'll close the floor, open it up for general discussion.
I have a general discussion question pertaining to the justification statement. The last line says that the home is situated on a rear deck, will not face any homes directly, will be facing the woods. And from the orientation that I'm looking at and looking at the lot, I don't believe that's correct. I'm not sure how to state that, but from the orientation of the drawing that I'm looking at, it appears that the structure that we're in question of is facing into the side yard of the existing home next to it. Is not facing the wooded area. So I'm not 100% understanding the justification statement. So I have a question about that. I mean, general discussion about that, and I'm just opening that up to the board to see if they're seeing the same thing I'm seeing. It does not appear to be facing
Well-
the right wooded area.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't know. We can open up the floor again and ask the question.
Well, I guess I was looking for discussion with the board with what I'm looking at, to see if, you know, if I took that justification statement and looked at this drawing, I would think that that structure that we're discussing would be facing more to the right-hand side, which is where the wooded area is. This appears to me to be facing about center point of that rear lot line, which is more in the, what I'm calling the backyard of the neighbor.
Can you put this back up here? I think I can explain this. Yeah. If you look at the top, see where it says drainage easement? That is where the trees are. So
Correct.
it is directly to the trees, right? No?
If you look at what's on the screen right now, the
Yep.
treed area is here. This is the treed area. This is the rear of the lot. This is the rear of the
And
lot.
you're right.
So in my thinking, that statement on the justification statement is not 100% truthful.
Based on its facing 1/3. There's three portions of that covered rear deck that are open. 1/3, which would be the left side, as we're looking at, it's facing the woods. Therefore, 2/3 of it is facing
Facing the yard.
other properties, yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to what Rob said earlier, to move forward with the foundation and then come to us, it just seems like it puts us in a predicament to be in a decision-making process that we didn't have the liberty of making when the foundation's not there and we're trying to make the decision otherwise. There are rules and standards that are set in place, and when, by and large, most folks comply with design criteria and things of that nature, to have a foundation in and moving forward, and then we're being told that if they don't put a roof over their deck, that the deal's gonna fall apart, I have a trouble, I don't know about you all, but I'm having a problem trying to process that information.
Yeah.
If we just look at the facts, and if there was not a foundation in, we might be able to come to other ideas or solutions or compromises that could help everybody attain what they're attempting to attain, with keeping in the criteria that's been designed and put in place that are county standards that we're supposed to be making decisions on.
Yeah, Jim?
I agree with what you just said. They did proceed with the foundation at their own risk, and it does put you in a situation, but the applicant did present alternatives. They looked at moving the building over, given again it's a custom design house, and understanding that there's a 2-foot offset and everything else. They did show you surveys where they pushed the house in a direction, and it did not take this out of the rear yard setback. So there was evidence that they at least made an attempt to do what you're saying was, how do you push the house around on this lot and make it work? Given again, the orientation being on the corner and all the other facts. Now, that, they weren't able to accomplish that, and maybe there's another idea that I might be missing, but they at least made an attempt to show you that they've looked at alternatives and gave you the dimensions as well. So, the other point, while I'm standing up, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, we really got to go back to, let's see, what makes sense to me is that the white Tyvek house is the property right here. So there is a distance, even though the orientation is not towards the wooded area in that easement, at least they are, and we don't have that distance from the proposed covered deck to the next house. The brick one is on this corner lot. So the orientation is a little bit hard to kind of get in this because there's a street that wraps around, but just wanted to point that out, that there is a significant difference between the actual house structures, not just the property line.
Thank you for the clarification, Jim. I did not realize that the brick house was the corner house.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
thank
you
for
know,
pointing that out.
that's the advantage of me sitting here and just
Yes.
listening to things,
Thank you.
that again, the brick house is on this lot. The white one that's directly behind the black car, which is our car, is on that lot.
Yes.
And so there is a kind of a relationship between this back property line, and Amy, I guess there isn't a better aerial that shows, I mean, I'm trying to point on this little, but anyway, you get what I'm
Yes, sir.
saying, is that there's I don't know the actual distance between the proposed covered deck and the next structure, but it's significant.
So for me, the fact that it is a custom designed home could have been taken into account the restrictions of the lot and could have been designed in such to fit within those. The fact that they decided to move forward, it's no bearing on the decision of whether or not we approve or disapprove, in my opinion. That is a choice that was made. If it was, there had to be an at-risk behavior here because they chose to move forward with building in spite of the fact that they knew that it was X'd out, as we saw in the presentation, and not approved as part of the plan, and that it was at risk. So that part of it, to me, has zero bearing. They made that choice.
just, I'm going to kind of make a statement, just kind of for clarification for all of us. It's my understanding that there's no foundation underneath this. This is an elevated wooden deck with what appears to be, based on the drawing, maybe 2 6x6 posts. Can we get that clarified, that there's no foundation underneath that? May we bring him back up and get clarification?
I guess my question to you, does that matter? Does that really matter in the final decision of this?
In my observation, if there's just 2 posts sitting there that this roof system sits on, I feel like it's different than if there's a full foundation that's holding the entire structure up. And based on what I was seeing in the drawing elevation, it appears if it's 6x6 post, so there's no significant foundation underneath. You know, perhaps it doesn't, because we're still asking for the roof line to go by, but that was, you know, just something I'm observing. And based on what I'm seeing, there is no full foundation underneath. That answers my question.
Rather than calling him back up
Yeah.
and open this back up,
That-
you might be making an assumption, but I think that what you're seeing for the footers is actually for the house itself, not
Yes,
the-
that's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And you're right, Rob, it probably doesn't make a difference, because it's still the roof system that's in question here.
That's the question.
Okay.
Rob, everything that, the direction that you're going and some of the comments you've made, I 100% agree with. However, as Jim pointed out, they did present testimony of different designs, different layouts. Testimony was given that if it was pushed further, whatever direction that is, toward the street, that aesthetically it would not look as good as it does where it currently is. So there was testimony, there was evidence that that they attempted to fall within the guidelines. So I have to take all that in consideration. However, I agree with what you're saying, that if they we are here to uphold the law, the regulations, unless we see that there are, and then there's a list of things that we can look at to determine whether or not we want to make a decision one way or the other. If we don't approve this, I don't see that it is depriving the applicant of reasonable use of the land, right?
Correct.
So I do think that we can uphold the regulations, and still not prevent the applicant of reasonable use of the land. Yes, I understand that they try to look at other alternatives, and he even said in testimony that if we push it, it's just not aesthetically pleasing. Okay, that's testimony. But still, I don't see the necessity of breaking the regulations.
Agreed.
Any other comments? David? Good?
No, I'm fine.
All right, I'm willing to hear a motion.
Make a motion to deny OC-18-021 based on the testimony, based on the drawings, based on the discussion that we've had here about how it possibly could have met the requirements from different angles, different designs, different pieces, and that it could have stayed within the requirements of the zoning regulation. The it's not a variance. Denial of variance shall only apply to application considered at the June 26, 2018 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing.
Got a motion, do I have a second?
A second?
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Application's been denied.
Thank you all.
Amy, do we have the
We do.
applicant for the?
We do.
Okay, all right, very good.
I don't have to have that. Sorry. Thank you.
You've done it a couple of times, so.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, David, you want to read the second case?
Yes, docket number OC-18020, an application has been filed requesting a rear yard setback variance for an existing structure located at 5703 Blue Holly Place, Crestwood, Kentucky.
All right, this is your next docketed item here. As Mr. Pate stated, this is an application. It's twofold. The applicant is requesting a variance for the existing primary structure as well as a rear yard setback for a deck. The property is located again at 5703 Blue Holly Place. Property is zoned R2 residential and is approximately 0.197 acres. There's no previous site history regarding this parcel of land. This is an aerial view of the lot. And it's the rear yard. The rear yard is fenced in, just so you know. The applicant is requesting a rear yard setback for an existing single-family home and deck. The applicant's contractor applied for a deck permit to replace the existing deck on the home because it was deteriorating and in need of repair, and the homeowner also wanted to expand the deck along the rear of the house. The site plan provided with the application showed the deck encroaching closer than 15 foot allowed, and the home appeared to be encroaching into the required 25-foot rear yard as well. So our permit clerk caught that at the time of application and told them she couldn't accept the application and that they needed to have a survey done to clarify the setbacks. So a survey was performed on the property and found the home was 20.2 feet from the rear property line, requiring a 4.8 foot variance, and the current deck was 10 feet from the rear property line, requiring a 5 foot variance. So this is somewhat similar to the previous case. Division 330-020, number 9 says, an open, unenclosed, unroofed porch deck or paved terrace may project into a required front or required rear yard a distance of not more than 10 feet. So the closest the deck could be to the rear property line would be 15 feet because it's unroofed, unenclosed. So this is the survey that was done on the house. So the property line is there in red, highlighted in yellow. That's an existing drainage easement. The drainage easement is 15 feet, so there's 7.5 on the applicant's rear property and then on his neighbor's property on this side. The highlighted here in green, that is the 25-foot rear yard setback, and you'll see that the house is only 20.2 feet from the rear property line, and it should be 25. The applicant is a second owner of the property. They just recently purchased the property in June of 2014 and was not aware of the setback issues. The original building permit that was issued on August 17, 2006, and the rear setback was listed at 30 feet on that application. So this is the application that was submitted by the builder at that time, back in 2006, and you'll see highlighted down here in yellow that the rear yard was listed at 30 feet. The applicant has provided 2 deck plans for consideration of the board and stated in their justification statement that their deck is similar and consistent with other homes in the neighborhood. Again, this is the proposed deck plan. So at the closest, and my numbers are wrong in your staff report, so we'll just refer back to my summary statement in here on the presentation. The closest point that the deck is to the rear property line is 8 feet. So they would be requiring a 7-foot rear yard variance if you approved this proposed deck plan. The alternate deck plan, at the closest point, the deck is 10 feet from the rear property line, requiring a 5-foot rear yard setback variance. So this is the applicant's home. Again, you can see this is part of the fenced-in rear yard, so you cannot, the deck is not visible from the street or from the neighboring yards as well. So this is the west adjoining property owner. This is the east adjoining property owner. This is the east adjoining property owner's rear deck that they have. This is the side yard that just shows that it's fenced in as well. This is the existing deck that's on the house. And this just shows, these are pictures here that show just the deterioration of the deck. Okay, so in summary, the applicant is asking for 2 variances. The first variance is the rear yard setback for the primary structure. So the required rear yard is 25 feet. The requested rear yard, the actual rear yard for the existing home is 20.2 feet. So they're asking for 4.8 feet to bring the house into compliance. And then they're also asking to have a rear yard setback variance for the attached deck. So depending on which deck plan if you wish to approve, the proposed will require a 7-foot variance because at its closest point it's 8 feet from the rear property line, or the alternate plan will require a 5-foot variance because at its closest point it is 10 foot from the rear property line. That is all that I have.
Amy, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And this is more for information for me. We have a lot of, by the builder basically got the approval to build the house,
Correct.
and then the house was built incorrectly, correct?
Yes, sir.
Who would catch that normally? Code enforcement?
No, we don't go out and do as-built surveys. We don't have surveying equipment or surveyor on
Okay.
staff.
So what's the ramifications for a builder if we were to find out this? I mean, I know we're 2 owners
They
down
would
now.
they would have to come and get a variance.
In variance at this point.
A lot of lending institutions require surveys now with closing, so some of these are being found at that point. Obviously, Mr. Dawson's bank did
been-
not require a survey because it would have been found at that point.
Yeah, so it's been 11 years basically since the structure was built, and so this wasn't found until the survey was done at this point.
Correct. Correct. At the time that they applied to replace the deteriorating deck.
Correct.
So clarifying just a little bit of what you said, this wasn't that the house was shifted or moved, it's that the application was just wrong. When you do the math, if you can you go back to the original and show to that?
Sorry.
Again, this is the same issue that we've run into before, where they've issued numbers on here. I mean, if you do the math, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, they're showing this 30 feet, and it not only is it not 30 feet, it's 25 is the rule.
25
So-
is the rear.
So
required
it
rear.
wasn't 30 feet, it was 5 feet to the line and another 4.8 feet beyond that. So,
Correct.
and I don't know the solution to this, but it's not the homeowner's fault.
No.
Okay? But I don't know what the solution is to this, but it's like and I'm not saying this person didn't just make a mistake, okay? I have no idea about this builder, whatever. I don't even want to look at the name of who did it. But the ongoing issue that we continue to run into is that either this was a mistake, or if somebody wanted to do it intentionally, again, I'm not saying that's what happened here, they submit it saying 30 feet, we go about, we do the stuff, and we move on.
The review process on building permits is a lot more detailed today than it probably was 11 years ago. Our current permit clerk, unfortunately, is leaving next Friday. So we're training a new person, so hopefully this new person will pick up the same methodology of checking this, because Megan will actually take the dimension of the building with the required, what they show on their setbacks, and add them up, and if they don't add up, she stops it at that point.
So there's a new process to catch this type of error.
Rather than just taking for their word for what they put on there, it is actually, there's some math that's done
That
to
makes
check
me
it.
feel a lot better.
We try, but
And I guess that's where I was going as well.
That's what I was
Yeah.
trying to go with. Okay.
That still doesn't stop mistakes from happening
In the
because.
field.
Yeah, in the field, because
Right.
the builder is then responsible for staking the corners and everything else, and stuff happens. Now, collectively, because you've been on the board a long time, you've seen a number of these over the years, but given the amount of houses that have been built in the county over the past 20 years, we don't see a lot of them until somebody like the applicant comes in and says, okay, I didn't create this. We end up correcting the problem, if you will, if this were to be approved, especially on the main house, then if a mortgage company said, well, you're in violation of rear yard setback, they have a variance. So it kind of solves the problem. While I'm up here too, the deck theoretically could be rebuilt piece by piece without but that's not what they want to do. They want to tear it all down and build a new one, because that's the right way to do
Right,
it.
they could repair it, these boards at a time, these
Yes.
boards at a time, these
Yes.
boards at a time, and make it happen as it currently sits.
Yes.
But the first variance is what, if he ever wants to sell,
That's correct.
Could
he
become
has
an
to have that
issue.
variance to ever be able to sell the house.
Yes, yeah.
The second part is about doing it the right way versus doing it the wrong way.
Right.
And we seem to be notorious about odd-shaped lots with this situation.
Well, and what we've tried to do over the years is if we see smaller or odd-shaped lots, we tell the developer of the subdivision to at least put a footprint of a house that
On it.
meets their deed restrictions for minimum square footage. And of course, even if they do that, somebody else comes along, there's still a different builder perhaps, and they, again, have to stake it. Mistakes get made even in the construction sometimes.
But this is how it
of course.
could be done.
Yeah,
is
and we
basically
don't
what it-
have instruments, we don't check setbacks when we're doing like footer inspections. so-
Well, I'd just like to say publicly, I appreciate you guys taking the time to kind of explain it to us and give us a education on what your process is, because it helps with making decisions.
Yeah, yeah.
It makes me feel tremendously better that there's a new process, or there is a process now in place that wasn't in place when this occurred. And it possibly, what I hear you saying, Amy, is you believe today it would more than likely get caught today, where back then it wasn't even checked.
Rather than just saying, well, they said it was 30. Is it really 30? Does it mathematically add up, the length of the house and to that?
Correct. And just for some of the newer members, this has happened. I understand what you're saying, that based on percentage, it's a low percentage, but it still seems like in the past, it happened a lot. And I got to believe there's a lot more out there, because we don't require surveys. I bet there's a lot of houses changing hands that have problems. We just don't know it.
Yeah,
Could be.
yeah.
All right. Any other questions for Amy? Okay, thanks, Amy. If we can have the applicant come forward. Morning.
Morning. How are you?
Raise your right hand, state your name and address.
My name is Michael Dawson. I live at 5703 Blue Holly Place in Crestwood.
And if you can be sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And just justify what the project is, what you're trying to do.
Basically, just trying to replace the deck that we currently have with a newer. Original plan was we wanted to go with a little larger deck. We've got friends that actually have the same house in the same subdivision, and we were like, hey, trying to copy their idea of expanding it over. Where this kind of bay area is here, that's our dining room. So we were just kind of trying to put like a little dining area off to the side there. We were gonna just a little bit more outside space for us to live in. This kind of polygon shape, that's actually a step down. We were just kind of trying to make it a little bit more of a landing. So where it's got that 8 foot in the setback there, that's really just the steps down. It's going to be two steps to get to the ground level. So it's really just a small 4x4 platform there. We were just trying to expand it just to try and make it look halfway decent. So there's a tree that kind of sits about right here. So we were just trying to build around that tree and make it kind of look like part of the deck is all that we were trying to do there. The alternate plan, here was after we found out about the problem. Really what we tried to do is, the original thing was we were trying to expand out to, instead of a 10 foot on that main deck area, this is the main deck area. We were trying to just expand that to 12 foot, just to give us a little bit of extra space. If we have a little couch and a couple of chairs, give us a little bit of space to sit outside, and then we were going to put a dining area over in this area. That was the game plan. When we found out about the variance issue, or the setback issue, that's when we kind of, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to erase this stuff. That's on.
Hit that
Okay.
corner, it'll clear it
All
for
right.
you.
Thank you. So I stopped coloring on there. So basically, when we realized about this, we said, okay, well, let's I guess we can forget about the extra 2 feet that we were hoping for here in this, on that main deck area. And then really, as you can see, we're just, you got the bay here. We were just trying to mimic that and kind of coming around with the expanded area. So have, again, this as a dining area. This is just kind of like put that as our, we'll call it the living area, and then have a dining area outside. So that's really all that we were trying to do with the deck. And I think it's kind of really, and like I said, we got the idea off of a neighbor with the same house and similar deck on theirs. So I wish I could say I was more creative than that, but I'm not.
Michael, how long have you lived in the house?
It'll be 4 years in July. I know because I moved in when my wife was 9 months pregnant with my youngest child. So yeah, so it'll be 4 years in a month.
All right, any other questions for Michael?
The current deck, when you walk out from the house onto it, is there any step downs, or how many step downs is it?
Right now, it's like a maybe 3 inches below that threshold of the door when you step out. I'd say it's almost like it's a step that I don't really notice ever when you go out. It's not, I wouldn't
Almost
call it a
none.
step. Yeah.
Okay?
Exactly.
And so what you're proposing on both of these is that there are at least 1 step down, and then the other one 2 steps down. And let me
Sorry, yes.
before you answer,
Sorry.
what I'm trying to do is, if you're encroaching on a neighbor's property, the higher up you are in your deck, the more you can see into their yard. And so what you're proposing is to build a deck that's lower, so your line of sight would be they would have more privacy with your new decks as opposed to your old deck. Is that correct?
Yes, I thought of it more as we were trying to give ourselves the privacy, but yes, you are 100%, because right now, our neighbors behind us, they put in a pool, and I love my neighbors behind me, but I don't need to see them in their pool every time I want to just sit outside and have a cup of coffee with my wife on a Sunday, you know?
So your proposed new deck adds more privacy for everyone?
Yes.
Great.
Correct.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
In one of the overview images that we'd seen previously, it was showing a red line that depicted the property line and then the fence placement, and you did have a survey done, is that correct?
Correct.
Is your fence on your property?
Yes.
Okay, so there's no issues with your fence placement, so perhaps some of those lines may have been a little bit skewed.
I saw that too, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not.
But that's not an issue because you had a survey done and you know that your fence is accurate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Our
thankfully, yes.
lines are only overlays, they are not
Yes.
survey plots.
But just when I saw that and we're talking about maybe potential, easement or encroachment, some people, where a fence line is, they start to assume that's where the property is, but you have clarified that for me.
Yes,
Thank you.
and actually, as you say that, the gentleman behind us, that ties in, I'll say, on this lot right here.
Yes.
He's actually put a pool right here, and before putting in a pool, he put a fence line, and he came to us and asked if he could just tie in and just use our back of our fence, and we were like, that's fine with us, we don't care, because he was just wanting to keep his kids, somewhat safe when they're back in the pool.
In terms of your deck, you proposed 2 different ones. I would assume, would it be correct to assume that your preference would be the one that has the 8-foot,
Yes, that
7-foot variance versus the 5-foot variance?
Yes, that was our original plan before knowing of any issue. The smaller deck was just like, hey, you know what? If we keep this the same, and the 5 foot is really, it's the same 4.8 that it was currently. With that, it's rounded up to the 10 foot shown on the plan that you're seeing here, but it's basically holding the exact same corner as it currently is. We were honestly, it's been one of these like. Knowing that we were having some rot issues with dry rot, we've had Terminex out a million times just to make sure we weren't looking at termites and things like that, and we weren't dealing with any of that issue. But as time has gone on, we're like, we got to just get this deck replaced, and it's to the point now where, and that's where I was trying to show with some of those posts, like you can't just lift up the floorboards. Some of those posts that are actually supporting the deck, those have to be replaced as well. And just to do it properly, we're like, want to do it. Yes, the larger deck would be that would be our, if we had our druthers, that would be our choice. But I mean, a deck that is as I call it, orange, because I hate the stain color that was chosen on our deck, and, you know, I have a deck that isn't orange and rotting. It would just be my preference at this point, to be honest with you, sir.
And the first design is just simply a replacement of what's there?
This first design, it bumps out what was there by 2 feet. This 12-foot dimension here, the original deck was only 10 foot. So that's the biggest change there. Like kind of in that gray underneath, that's the original deck underneath. So it really, where that 16-foot dimension, that's where the original deck kind of stopped. If you can see if you can see the steps there drawn just next to the 14 dimension, that's actually where that deck ends, is at that line. Like if you extend that over, that's the original deck line. So the original deck was to expand it. The original idea was to expand it out another 2 feet, and then you can see the alternate was just, okay, let's just keep it as it is at that same 10 foot. We're not going any further into it, and just trying to just go. And as we go a little bit further to the west, and you know, as we expand the deck over into this area, at least we're kind of getting closer to the intent of the setback as it was. So you can see we're actually finally at the 15 feet with this last bit here, 13 here, and you know, trying to get closer to what was actually intended by the county.
So that design between the 15-foot setback and the 13-foot setback, how far of a distance is that from 13 to 15 to 13?
That's 8 feet right
8 feet,
there.
okay.
Yes. Yeah, and what that actually is, that's measuring. I don't know if it's clear, but there's actually a step down. So there's like the deck itself will sit about this high off the ground, and then that 8-foot measurement will be for that one step down to the ground. So the actual deck itself will be another foot, basically another foot back. So it'd be closer to 14 foot at the actual deck level. That's just to put a step in there, and we're just trying to wrap it around just because. Over in this area is my kids' trampoline, so they're always running that way, and it seems like the adults are always going that way. But mysteriously, the kids are going one way and the adults are going the other. So that's why we're putting the step the way we were.
Further questions for Michael?
No work has begun at this time?
No. Our contractor, who we hired, thankfully, he does things the right way. Came for a permit, and we found about the problem, and everything has stopped at that point.
Okay.
So, no. And I'd like to say Amy has been a huge help. I mean, I certainly wouldn't look this professional if I didn't have her doing everything. So thank you very, very much for all the work you've done. So.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay, again, seeing nobody in the audience, nobody here to speak in favor or opposed, no final statements. Board members, questions for anybody? Okay, I'll close the floor, open it up for general discussion.
I think for me, the first requested variance for the house, I mean, really, there's not a whole lot of options here. And so I don't think that this was caused for sure by the current homeowner. It's the kind of thing that is unfortunate, but I'm very happy to hear that the process has been changed. So hopefully this is not something that will continue to occur as we build more homes in Oldham County. So I would be definitely in favor of the variance requested. When we talk about the difference between 4.8 feet and 5 feet, because we've even had cases where there was a error in the surveying, I would suggest we make the variance 5 feet instead of 4.8 and don't worry about the 2 or 3 inches, just to make sure it's all within. They don't have to come back before us. On the second part, as stated in the testimony by staff, that they could actually go through and try to replace board by board and do something along those lines to try to do something to make this deck replaced, and yet they're trying to come in and do the right thing. He's even provided a proposed alternative if so we don't have to have it expanded if we don't. I think the question before us, in my mind, is not whether or not, this is my opinion, that whether or not we approve a deck, it's the question of, is it an 8-foot variance or is it a 10-foot variance? And for me, the 8-foot, like he was stated, if you look at that drawing, can you put that up there, please for me, the proposed deck variance? On that one, where it shows the 8 feet, part of it is a step. I mean, frankly, he's really, in terms of the real permanent deck that's up high and close to the neighbor's property, where you could see into a neighbor's property, it's more about the 9 foot. So my opinion is, I don't have a problem with either one of these proposals. If the other members have a strong feeling about one versus the other, I don't have a strong feeling to say that I would have to go with the alternate versus the proposed. The proposed is okay with me. That's my opinion.
Amy, can you put the alternate back up, please? Likewise, I have no problem with the variance on the house. Regarding the deck, as it currently exists, it already is what we're looking at before us. That's the 10-foot. Yeah. So this is so coming before us as it is already asking for a 5-foot variance. That's what we have here for the alternate, up to a 5-foot variance. I have no problem with approving what exists today. Again, it does not allow for an unreasonable use of the land. The deck exists today. Like you said, they can replace board by board and just repair the thing, or they can tear down and replace in the exact same footprint as it is today, expand it out, but not ask for any additional variance than what they already have today. With that said, I'm not in favor of the proposed. I would be in favor of just granting what he currently has today.
Based on the testimony today, I would not have a problem with either one. I do appreciate that he's professionally brought information to us that gives us two choices. And what I look at is based on a lot of our information. It says, will it essentially change the character of the area? I honestly, in my opinion, don't believe that either choice would change the character of the neighborhood. So I could approve either the proposed or the alternate.
I didn't state, and I apologize, I'm jumping back in here, but the fact that he's lowering the deck height so you don't see as much when we know there's a fence around it, that was part of why I don't have an issue with the slightly expanded deck. That was part of my consideration, that lowering it makes it where your line of sight changes. But that's just one opinion. Gentlemen, I would like for one of you to weigh in at least so we can know whether we're doing, because we have 2 votes for, what appears to be for either, and 1 vote for alternate only, so.
That's right.
Based on the structure itself, obviously in light of the fact that this has come to the current homeowner's attention that was due to no fault of his own, the home's been there since 2006, I would be in favor of granting that. As far as the deck goes, I have mixed emotions about it. I can see both sides of the conversation, and I'm not sure if I feel strongly in either direction. Given the fact that, as we've said, that it could be replaced board by board as under the repair process. The fact that the deck will be lowered, I think, if it's going to go that extra foot or two, I think in light of the fact that the deck's going to be at a lower elevation, and the fact that in the images that we've seen, there's already a privacy fence around the backyard, I'm not sure if anybody would even know that anything's being done other than hearing the noises of the deck being constructed. As to its placement, I'm not sure if anybody would know. So I stand really rather neutral on the deck conversation.
What if the fence weren't there?
I think that I would be inclined to want to hold to the alternate plan if the fence wasn't there. But unless someone corrects me, I think that it was my understanding that both proposed decks were going to be at a lower elevation than the existing deck. And that was my understanding. In light of that, because the fence is there, again, I don't feel strongly on either direction. If the fence wasn't there, I would be somewhat inclined to want to make it encroach less into that space.
Todd? Anything?
No, I'm fine.
Nothing further to add? All right, any further question, or, discussion? Okay, I'm willing to take a motion.
Make two motions. Make your first.
Yeah, thanks.
On the house.
Yep.
Second motion on
Yeah, so we will require two different motions. The first one is the rear yard setback variance for the primary structure. So I'm going to make a motion on that. Move to approve the rear yard setback variance primary structure for OC-18-020. Based on the evidence today about how the house was built, the current plans, or the plans that were put in place, it was assumed that everything was within the requirements based on the fact that we now know that the evidence is presented that the survey was done, and that is not the case, that it is no fault of the current homeowners, and we have no idea whether it was accidental, intentional, or whatever. I move to approve a 5-foot variance. The motion, the variance shall only apply to the application considered at the June 26, 2018 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing.
And today's the 21st. If I put the 26th on there, I
Oh,
apologize.
it says 26, I read it.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I
you're
think it's our
right.
planning commission date, so,
Yeah.
sorry.
I'm
June
just reading it,
21st.
can you tell?
Sorry.
21st.
Okay, got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the first part of the first motion's been approved.
In regards to rear yard setback variance for an attached rear deck, move to approve OC-18-020 for a, let me make sure I get this right, a 8-foot rear yard variance.
No,
No?
If you're doing the proposed plan, the deck is 8 feet from the property line, therefore it will require a 7-foot variance. I had said earlier that that's not correct. They need to use what's on the screen.
So it's the 15 minus 8, which is 7.
7,
Thank you.
correct.
A 7-foot rear yard setback variance based on the testimony that the deck will be actually lowered and lower than the current existing deck, and that it will improve the privacy of the current homeowner and his neighbors. The variance shall only apply to the application considered at the June 21st, 2018 Oldham County Board of Adjustments public hearing.
Okay. We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? It's been approved, and both have been approved. Minutes. Everybody's received the minutes. Do we have any amendments? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes as they are written and presented.
I second.
Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes have been approved. Any other business?
You will have a Board of Adjustments meeting next month. We've already received 2 applications,
Okay.
so.
Alright.
Other than that,
Anything else, anybody? Get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
I second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, meeting adjourned.
Mike's off.
Mike's off. You were just taunting me, weren't you?
And talk to you in a second.